Buenos Aires, Wednesday, May 21st, 2025, 1:30 p.m. A housekeeper arrives at the apartment complex where the Selzer family lives. It's her regular routine. She works here on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. She heads up to the 6th floor and, with her usual motion, inserts the key into the apartment lock. The mechanism resists. The door is locked from the inside with 2 full turns, and from the other side, a key belonging to the owners is in the lock. With a small maneuver, the housekeeper manages to turn the lock and open the door. Inside is absolute, unnatural silence. She takes a few steps into the entry hall. Her eyes fall on the corridor leading to the dining room. There, on the floor, lies motionless a body. It's the youngest son of the owners, 12-year-old Ivo Selzer. The woman doesn't scream or move further. She immediately leaves the premises and calls the emergency services. Behind the sealed, armored door remains only silence, concealing 3 more bodies. Officers from the city police enter the 6th floor apartment. Everything inside is in perfect order. Belongings are in their place, dresser drawers closed. The investigation turns into a clinical recording of the death scene. In the entry hall lies 12-year-old Ivo Selzer. The boy collapsed in the hallway, never making it out. In the dining room, they find 15-year-old Jan with multiple wounds to his chest and back. In the master bedroom, on the bed, lies the head of the family, 53-year-old Bernardo Adrian Selzer. Near him, detectives discover a kitchen knife with a metal handle. The final victim, Laura, is found in the bathroom, her body slumped onto the toilet in an unnatural posture. The only survivor is the family cat, which an officer carefully carries out in a pet carrier. While a crowd gathers outside the building discussing what's happened, the bodies are sent to the morgue to establish exact times of death. The investigative team working in the apartment quickly formulates their leading theory. All evidence available at the initial inspection fits the pattern of an extended self-destruction. Suspicion falls on the patriarch, Bernardo Adrian Selzer. The detective's reasoning hinges on the location of items in the master bedroom. Next to the man's body, on top of the blanket, lies the kitchen knife with the metal handle. To the operatives, it appears as an obvious ending. The father first attacked his wife and sons, then took his own life, dropping the weapon in the final moment. Scenarios like this are not uncommon in forensic investigation. They often follow hidden financial ruin or a severe personal crisis pushing someone toward a decision to go out altogether. This hypothesis immediately leaks into the media. News outlets begin to spread the story of a successful broker who likely cracked under pressure. Reporters dig into his career, checking real estate deals and grain market transactions. The public quickly accepts the official version. Neighbors and acquaintances, who just that morning saw the Selzers as a model family, begin recalling any signs that something might have been off. As the bodies are transferred to the county morgue, Bernardo Adrian's reputation is already in shambles. Headlines paint him as the man who ended the lives of his own sons and wife. But no one knows yet that this neat and tidy narrative is about to fall apart the moment the medical exam begins. The initial findings from the morgue hit the investigative team like a cold shower. Suddenly, the entire picture shifts. At the center of this new direction is the body of Laura Fernandez Leguizamon. Her wounds are drastically different from those found on the rest of the family. The medical examiner notes a cluster of deep, penetrating injuries around her heart. The wounds are so tightly grouped they almost overlap, a pattern that, in forensic pathology, strongly suggests self-infliction. This kind of precision indicates the person wasn't fighting back or being attacked unexpectedly. Additionally, the exam reveals cuts on her wrists, trauma to the knee, and a broken nose. But the most telling detail is what's missing. There are no defensive wounds on her hands or forearms. Laura didn't raise her arms to protect herself, something virtually unavoidable in a real attack. Back at the apartment, investigators take a closer look and find something they missed during the first sweep: a second knife, this one with a wooden handle. It, too, is processed for forensic evidence. Once all these pieces are put together, detectives revise their entire theory. Bernardo Adrian is no longer considered the main suspect. He's now viewed as a victim. He didn't attack his family. The weapon used in the crime had been in Laura's hands all along. Using blood pattern analysis and the findings from the autopsy, detectives reconstruct the timeline of that tragic night, almost down to the second. The first victim was the father. Bernardo Adrian was in a deep sleep. Laura's attack was swift and targeted, 3 deep, focused stab wounds. The absence of struggle marks on his body and bedding suggests he never had a chance to react. Investigators also consider the possibility that Bernardo may have been under the influence of sleeping medication, which would have made it nearly impossible for him to defend himself. Afterward, Laura left the bedroom and moved toward her sons. And here, everything changed. From the forensic evidence, it appears Jan and Ivo either woke up from the noise or never went to sleep. The pathologists find extensive defensive wounds on both boys' arms and hands. They fought back hard, trying to block the strikes. The physical evidence in the apartment supports this. Ivo managed to run into the hallway, while Jan made it to the dining room. Laura chased them through the apartment, inflicting between 10 to 12 stab wounds on each of them before they stopped moving. Lying beside her husband's body, Laura began inflicting wounds on herself with the same knife, but her passing wasn't immediate. Bleeding heavily, she managed to stand and make her way to the bathroom. That's where her strength gave out. She collapsed onto the fixtures, bringing the entire chain of events to an end. To truly grasp the magnitude of this collapse, we have to rewind. Back to the lives now reduced to autopsy reports at the morgue. Bernardo Adrian Selzer, head of the family, was born in January 1972 in a small rural town called Rivera. Coming from deeply rooted agricultural origins, he managed to turn his background into capital. In the early 2000s, during the boom in the soybean industry, he built a stellar career in grain markets. Starting as a junior analyst, he rose through the ranks to become a respected broker and advisor at a top-tier firm, investing his earnings into real estate across the border in Paraguay. Those who knew him remember a calm, courteous man who carried himself with quiet professionalism. His life took a more complete shape after he met Laura Fernandez Leguizamon. A native of southern Buenos Aires, Laura was 2 years younger and worked in sales. Striking in appearance and socially active, she and Bernardo followed a familiar romantic arc. Shared interests, a fast wedding, the birth of their first son Jan, and 3 years later, the arrival of Ivo. Laura embraced her role as a homemaker, projecting the image of a dedicated mother, deeply involved in raising her sons. Her social media pages became a curated window into an ideal life. Pictures from tennis courts, snapshots of finished books, and updates from bike rides with friends. Their timeline overflowed with vacation geotags, Mar del Plata, Uruguayan resorts, sightseeing in Spain and France. To the outside world, the Selzers were the picture of middle-class success. They had money, status, health, and what seemed to be a bright, clear future. No one in Laura's follower count or Adrian's professional circle ever saw cracks in that glossy image. He published market analysis in trade journals. She shared photos of smiling sons. Their life appeared seamless, every detail in place, every challenge seemingly under control. But behind closed doors, something else was unfolding. One video from 2017, archived and long forgotten, has now resurfaced with chilling relevance. It's footage from a professional conference where Bernardo Adrian was invited to speak as an expert. On screen, he appears confident and composed, standing at a podium in a tailored suit, sharing insights on risk management. For a financial analyst, this is standard fare, calculating odds, avoiding bad calls, and protecting portfolios. But then, he veers off script. The numbers fade from the PowerPoint. On the big screen behind him appears a photo, not of charts or spreadsheets, but of Laura, Jan, and Ivo. They're all smiling, and Bernardo turns to the audience and calls them his greatest investment. He explains that family is the one thing he's not willing to gamble with. His philosophy is clear-cut and pragmatic. If you want to protect what truly matters, you live responsibly. The broker was convinced that by staying in control, by being steady and doing everything right, he could ensure his wife and sons were always safe. In that video, words are spoken that, 8 years later, would take on a haunting new meaning. Into the microphone, the man says, "I don't take risks with anything I'm not willing to lose. I don't want to lose my family, so I don't put them at risk." There's genuine emotion in his voice. To him, this formula is flawless. He believes danger always comes from the outside, unstable markets, failed investments, external threats. The audience applauds. To them, he's a success story, a man who found the perfect balance between his career and home life. No one in that room, not even the speaker himself, could have imagined that the breakdown in risk management wouldn't come from the stock exchange, but from within his own bedroom. The man who built a career forecasting crises never saw the slow unraveling that had already begun in the mind of the woman he proudly displayed on that screen. As investigators begin to trace Laura Fernandez Leguizamon's digital footprint, subtle clues start to emerge, hidden beneath the polished surface of her curated life. If you scroll back through her social media feed to February 2025, just 3 months before the tragedy, one post stands out sharply against the stream of cheerful updates. Normally filled with snapshots from tennis courts or cycling trips with friends, this time Laura opened up about something more personal. The post was about the weight of motherhood. She described herself as someone who had learned not to drown in a glass of water, capable of handling everyday stresses. But then came a phrase, tossed in casually and almost unnoticed, that now reads like a verdict. She admitted she had wanted to sleep for 15 years. It wasn't a random number. 15 years was exactly the age of her oldest son, Jan. In that moment, she told the world, whether it hurt her or not, that the crushing burden and desire to disconnect had been with her since the day he was born. To a casual reader, it may have seemed like typical burnout. Followers likely double-tapped the heart icon without thinking twice. No one made the connection between her son's age and the length of her emotional exhaustion. Depression hadn't stormed into that house suddenly in May 2025. It had lived there quietly for a decade and a half, growing up alongside the family. What others mistook for stability was, in fact, a slow, unspoken unraveling. Laura chose to confide in a smartphone screen instead of real people, and that quiet cry for help disappeared into the algorithm, lost among filtered smiles and vacation highlights, until it was far too late. In the kitchen, where everything else was just as perfectly arranged as the rest of the apartment, detectives discovered one object that stood in stark contrast to the order around it. On the table lay a white sheet of paper, filled with shaky, uneven handwriting. Analyzing that note became a psychological deep dive, a desperate attempt to decode the collapse of a human mind. Handwriting experts quickly noticed that the text hadn't been written all at once. The sentences were disjointed, as if captured at different emotional peaks. Letters slanted in various directions. Cursive collided with block letters. The pen strokes revealed a trembling hand. Whoever wrote it was barely able to hold on. The contents of the note were just as fragmented as its appearance. Amid smudges and uneven pen strokes, investigators could make out scattered phrases of farewell and regret. It was too much. I love them. I feel them. But the most striking message, written in bold capital letters at the center of the page, read, "We're going to the street." This chilling line led investigators to believe that the motive behind the crime may have been an overwhelming fear of losing everything. In Laura Fernandez Leguizamon's mind, a deep-rooted belief had seemingly taken hold, a belief that the family was heading toward financial ruin, eviction, and homelessness, despite there being no actual evidence of that. And yet, a disturbing contradiction emerged. How could someone capable of writing such disjointed and irrational statements also demonstrate such cold, calculated clarity? Along the margins of the same page, investigators found something entirely different, details that were orderly and methodical. Laura had carefully written out the unlock pattern for her phone. Even more shockingly, she listed, in a neat column in the upper right-hand corner, the PIN codes for her husband's and both sons' devices. She knew that by morning, no one would be left to unlock those phones except the authorities. She had prepared full digital access to the family's life, fully aware that their physical presence would no longer exist. Bloodstains on the page helped forensic specialists determine that the note had been finished after the first act of violence had already occurred. While neighbors and co-workers speculated and tried to make sense of it all, investigators received testimony from someone far removed from the Selzer family's elite social circle. A key witness came forward, a man who made his living collecting cardboard on the streets of Buenos Aires. His connection to the family began back in 2023, after Bernardo and Laura saw a news segment on his story. A former immigrant who had lived for years in the U.S. before returning to Argentina, now struggling to survive. Impressed by his fluent English, the Selzers hired him as a private language tutor. This man's testimony dismantled any theory about actual bankruptcy, a suspicion that might have been drawn from the "we're going to the street" phrase in Laura's note. According to the tutor, the family never once missed a payment. In fact, Laura often paid in advance. Their generosity extended far beyond the usual boundaries of a business relationship. The couple regularly gave the tutor books and clothing that their sons had outgrown, with the request that he pass them along to students in need, young people he was teaching free of charge. From his perspective, the Selzers were financially stable and showed no signs of distress or desperation. However, the tutor's statement revealed something else, a pattern of social withdrawal. Their last contact came in March 2025. At that time, Bernardo told him the family was putting the lessons on hold because they were supposedly flying to the United States. He was polite and promised to reach out once they returned. But as later investigations confirmed, that trip never happened. The overseas travel was a fabricated story, a convenient cover allowing the family to quietly disappear from their social radar and retreat into complete isolation inside their apartment. On the witness's phone, investigators found several voice messages from Laura. In one of the final recordings, sent shortly before the tragedy, she apologizes for missing a lesson. Laura says they had a little issue come up, but assures the tutor that class would resume the following Saturday. Her tone is upbeat, polite, and entirely composed. That audio message became yet another piece of evidence highlighting how well Laura was able to mask her internal state. shifting seamlessly between deep psychological distress and the socially acceptable role of a cheerful, engaged student. As detectives delved into Laura Fernandez Leguizamon's medical history, a clearer clinical picture began to emerge, one pointing to a long-standing struggle that the family had tried to manage privately. It was confirmed that Laura had undergone inpatient treatment twice at specialized mental health facilities. The first serious episode occurred about a year and a half before the tragedy. At the time, both her family and Laura herself interpreted the breakdown as a peak of accumulated stress. After completing therapy and being stabilized with medication, she returned to her regular routine, creating the illusion of full recovery. But 2 months before her passing, a significant relapse occurred. This time, doctors diagnosed a serious psychiatric condition. What made things worse was that Laura had begun to realize the severity of her situation. In a conversation with a close friend, she admitted that coming to terms with her diagnosis only deepened her despair. A psychiatrist who had previously treated the family and maintained a personal relationship with them declined to continue as Laura's provider, citing ethical concerns. She recommended that Laura be seen by an independent, multidisciplinary team of specialists. The Selzer family put her on a waiting list, but time was no longer on their side. What's most chilling in this timeline is a moment of truth that seems to have slipped through the cracks. During the search of the apartment, authorities found a complete stockpile of prescription medications, including drugs used to treat schizophrenia and severe depression. This discovery led investigators to believe that Laura may have stopped taking her medication on her own during a period when she needed it most. The shift in her behavior didn't go entirely unnoticed by the people around her, though the signs weren't fully understood. The housekeeper, who visited the apartment regularly, later recalled a sudden and dramatic change in Laura's mood. She became visibly irritated by the sound of the vacuum cleaner. She began asking for the machine to be turned off and even requested that the housekeeper leave earlier than scheduled. The building manager also remembered a disturbing comment Laura made just weeks before May. "I only get out of bed for my sons. Nothing else matters anymore." Seeing his wife sink into apathy and stop leaving the bedroom, Bernardo Adrian made a decision that would turn out to be fatal. He stopped going into the office and began working from home, turning the apartment into his personal command center. He believed that simply being physically present would be enough to stabilize the situation and offer support. He tried to personally manage something that required urgent clinical intervention and professional supervision. The walls of their upscale home closed in, leaving the family alone with a rapidly escalating mental crisis that the head of the household mistakenly viewed as a manageable risk. Early in the morning, on May 23, 2025, the relatives made a choice that shattered the image of a united Selzer family once and for all. It was announced that the funerals would be held separately. Bernardo Adrian's relatives claimed the bodies of the father and the 2 sons, Jan and Ivo. The victims remained together, even after death. A separate service for Laura Fernandez Leguizamon was arranged by her sister, in complete isolation. Bernardo's family refused to bury the sons near the person who had taken their lives. Today, the 6th-floor apartment remains sealed. Neighbors who once viewed the couple as an example to follow are still trying to grasp the truth. A beautiful biography, built on polished vacation photos and curated online moments, ended at 2 different cemeteries. Behind the closed door of the perfect home, only the fractures remain. Cracks that had been spreading unnoticed for years until the entire structure collapsed in one irreversible moment.